this April 26th edition of the Courier Paperboyz. I'm Doug Newhoff, and I'm joined today by Jim Sullivan, Jim Nelson, and Nick Pateros. Once again, we've got a lot of things in the world of sports to talk about, guys, so let's get at it. Let's start with a little NFL news. Kind of interesting development with Tom Brady and the Deflate-gate situation. That went to an appeals court, and Tom Brady apparently lost the appeal, so he's going to have to serve his 4-game suspension, which was what Roger Goodell, the commissioner, originally mandated, and then they kind of got it suspended for last season, waiting for this decision in court, which they lost 2-1, so it wasn't a complete one-sided ruling, but anyway, I guess Brady and the NFL Players Association could appeal the ruling, but from what I understand, the legal expense of the time, it may not be worth it, so it sounds like they may just go ahead and take the suspension, which leaves New England without Tom Brady for the first 4 games of next season. Your thoughts about all this?
Oh, good. Aren't we all glad that the Deflate-gate is back? I mean, I was thrilled when I saw this come over the wire the other day. I'm sure Tom Brady was equally thrilled, if not more so. I think we're at the point now where he's probably just going to just say the heck with it and accept the suspension and go on from there. And I still can't get past the fact that what we were talking about here, what caused all this, millions of dollars in legal fees, hours before court, all this discussion in our business is deflated footballs. That's it. Deflated footballs caused all of this. It's going to cost Tom Brady 4 games, although not a whole lot of money. And it's being interpreted as a victory for Roger Goodell, but it's sort of a triumph for theater of the absurd. I mean, what's next for these guys? I mean, what's going to happen next? Hangnails? So they're going to start punishing people for that? A lot worse has gone on in the National Football League, and it'll be interesting to see, where they go from here. What the next thing is that gets people in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, you've got performance-enhancing drugs, domestic abuse, and we're sitting somebody out 4 games for deflated footballs here. Something doesn't really make much sense with that, and it has to be one of the most delayed suspensions ever. Can you imagine another job where you don't get suspended until over a year after the incident?
Longer than that, isn't it? Yeah.
Well,
It's been 2 years.
now.
Well, yeah, right after the Super Bowl until
It's
now,
crazy,
so.
yeah.
It is crazy, and it puts New England in a bit of a bind. I mean, they're always one of the perennial favorites in their division and playoff contender, and now they've got to play with, I think they still have Jimmy Garoppolo, right?
Yeah.
He's the starter.
But nobody else. I was watching it. It's really interesting because I think Brady's camp and New England's camp was thinking ahead that this was going to happen because they restructured his contract, and this year he's making only $1 million when he was
Right.
supposed to make like 5, and so he's only going to lose like
235,000,
and next year he's going to make $9 million. So figure that out. So yeah, they restructured it, and the other thing I interestingly saw is way back before this even got this far, Brady was willing to compromise because, and they made this point yesterday. I was watching NFL All Access or Total Access or something. I was waiting to see DeAndre Hall and Kurt Warner on TV. I had to watch this, so I got really informed on this decision. And one of the interesting things is he was willing to accept some kind of punishment, including the financial one, but he did not want to miss any game time. And the people point out is he's already got a lot of money, and his wife has got equally amount of money, so the money wasn't a big deal to him. He didn't want to miss any time, so that's why he wanted to compromise and just finally agree and take the suspension or the penalty. And it was kind of interesting. So.
Well, now, one thing that I want to clear up here, the judge's ruling, the ruling by this panel, did not necessarily endorse the findings of Roger Goodell and the other people.
Yeah.
They simply upheld the right for him to dish out punishment.
Right, they
So that-
applied the law as
Yeah,
it
yeah.
is.
Which is a big difference.
Yeah.
Right, they didn't determine any level of guilt or innocence
Yeah.
or anything like that. Just applied the law. So, okay, enough of that.
Enough of that.
Let's let that go away for the rest of the year, please. Let's go over to the NBA. It's injuries are just becoming an epidemic. It seems with Stephen Curry comes back from an ankle deal, and now he's got a moderate knee sprain that's going to keep him out indefinitely, I guess you'd have to say. And last night, Chris Paul of the Clippers broke a bone in his hand. Don't know what his status is, but that can't be good. And then Blake Griffin, he's limping around with a bad quad. Has the landscape of these playoffs like suddenly changed now?
Oh, it's tremendous. I think the team that looks like, I don't know if anyone's necessarily happy that someone else gets hurt, but the team that's got to be feeling pretty good about the situation is the San Antonio Spurs.
I was hoping you weren't going to say the Cavs.
But, no, well, we'll get to them in a minute, but the Spurs were going to be tough to beat anyway. A lot of people believe that they have the best chance of knocking off a healthy Golden State team. Now, if Curry can't come back or is at anything less than 100%, it might happen anyway. And so the Spurs are, assuming no one gets hurt on that team, they're sitting in pretty good shape. Now, Cleveland, I don't know, they went through this a year ago, by the way. They lost Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving got hurt in the finals. They're just good enough, I think, to have a chance to not only get through the East but win it all. But I think that San Antonio will be too tough for them in the finals. And if Golden State somehow gets healthy, I think Golden State could beat them as well. But they will be intriguing. I think they'll get all the way to the finals, and we'll see what happens with LeBron and his buddies once they get that far.
I think, yeah, the most interesting matchup going into the playoffs that everyone was looking forward to would be a San Antonio Golden State, and now if that happens without a healthy Curry, that really does diminish a little bit of the excitement around this year's playoffs.
All right, enough of that. Little Major League Baseball. I just wanted to bring this up for the sake of conversations, but our Minnesota Twins, Sully, are making news again for all the wrong reasons. They struck out a franchise record 18 times Saturday against the Washington Nationals. Then they followed that up by striking out 20 times on Sunday, although it did take them 16 innings to strike out that many times. So that's probably, I looked this morning and did a little research, and I can't find a record for the most strikeouts in a two-game stretch by a Major League team, but I'm thinking that's it.
It would be hard for someone to match that or want to admit that they matched it. Tanner Roark, the right-hander who pitched Saturday and got 15 of those 18 strikeouts, is not known as a power/strikeout pitcher.
Every pitcher's Cy Young.
Well, apparently
Twins
so.
are on the plate.
Although it's interesting that Danny Salazar was actually a guy that could, in theory, win the Cy Young. Only lasted 5 innings against them, so go figure. The problems have been there all year. The strikeouts are way out of control, and the Twins at least made some move to address that. Yesterday they sent Byron Buxton down. Buxton had struck out, I believe it was 24 times in 45 at-bats, and that's roughly half, or better than that.
You are correct.
So if you extrapolate that over, let's say, 500 plate appearances or 500 official at-bats, he'd strike out 250 times, and that's not good. So they sent him down to get him straightened out. In the meantime, Miguel Sano's looking a little better, although he's striking out. Oswaldo Arcia either hits home runs or strikes out, depending on what's happening on any given day. Last year at this time, I thought their season was over when they started off 2-7. I was wrong. This year they're like 6-14. I think their season's over, and I don't think I'm wrong this time.
You know, some other interesting strikeout stats that I found when I was just digging around. But as the Twins, with 188 strikeouts now in 20 games, they're only the third worst in baseball. I mean, Houston's out in front with 202, and Toronto's got 195. So as bad as we think the Twins are, there are a couple of teams that strike out more. The Twins are on pace for 1,522 strikeouts. That wouldn't even be the Major League record. The Astros apparently have that at 1,535. A couple other interesting strikeout numbers. Most people know that the most batters of pitchers ever struck out in a game is 20, a 9-inning game, and that's Kerry Wood, Randy Johnson, and Roger Clemens did it twice. And then, you know, we brought up Buxton and his 24 strikeouts and 49 trips to the plate. He shouldn't feel all that bad because Daniel Cabrera of Oakland struck out 18 straight times in 2009.
Oh, my God.
So that was a good one. Tom Seaver of the Mets once struck out 10 straight batters. I found that one pretty cool. And all of this brings us back to one fact. I mean, the game has changed. You know, I always told my kids that strike one and strike two are yours. You take your best swing and try and make something happen. But strike three is for your team. And that's not the way the game is played anymore. I mean, every strike, every swing is for statistics. It's for the individual. It's not so much for the team. So that's one reason strikeouts, I think, are up. And the other reason is there are a lot of power arms in baseball now that simply blow the ball by people. So, you know, you need to find a way, especially with two strikes, to get the ball in play. And something good might happen, you know, whether it's a half swing and you just chink it over the infield, or whatever the case may be. Maybe you move a runner over with nobody out. That's important to what happens a lot of times in baseball. But to go down swinging on strike three with runners on base especially is just a wasted at bat. So you guys probably see a lot of the same things I do, but what do you think about this trend in baseball and where we're at?
I don't think it's really going anywhere. It's, you know, it's about hitting home runs, and like I said, individual stats. You guys are worried about their stats, with their own base. I mean, it's crazy how many strikeouts you go. I mean, and then you look at the fans are into it too, because just about, you go to any major league game and like, you know, if some team gets 11 strikeouts, it's like a free pizza or something. And it's like, hey, let's get another strikeout. The fans are cheering for it. So, but no, I don't understand it. You know, I watched a lot of Major League Baseball. I got the Major League Extras package, so I'm bouncing around games when my Reds are getting beat, and I get tired of watching that. So, but you just look at it, you see people on base and they striking out. You know, like you said, striking out. I mean, why aren't we having productive outs? I think that's when I talk to my kids, like, Coach, we need to, you know, productive outs, putting it in play and advancing the runner, although you get out, is important to the team concept, and you just, you know, you see that's a lost thing. But the team, one team that's really good at putting the ball in play and getting productive outs is the team that won the World Series last year. If you watch Kansas City Royals, and they have productive outs. And if you look at, on the National League side, St. Louis Cardinals are the same way. They have productive outs all the time, and you watch them play. You know, and I think they also strike out a lot, but, you know, it seems like when they need to, when it counts, and they need to move a guy along, or string hits, or you know, a sac fly, or whatever it is, the Royals do it, and that's why they won.
The Royals are really good at doing it with runners in scoring position or runners on base and two strikes. You don't see the Royals or Cardinals. That's a good point. Among the leaders in strikeouts, and the end result speaks for itself. But what's curious to me is, okay, so it's an era of big contracts and promotional money and marketing yourself and all of this kind of thing, but isn't there any value in adding 20 points to your batting average as opposed to adding 2 home runs? Because that's probably, if you extrapolated this over the course of a season, and let's just use Miguel Sano as an example for no good reason, but let's say he strikes out swinging 200 times, 150 times, let's say, over the course of the season, and he gets a home run 5 times in that 2-strike situation. You know, really, is that going to make a big difference in the big picture? I mean, aren't you better off to do some things to get your batting average up 20 or 25 points and maybe drive in an occasional run that you wouldn't have otherwise?
I think you are.
How do you convince today's players of that?
I'm not. That's a good question. I'd like to know what they're being taught by people like Tom Brady.
Nothing, apparently.
Well, you wonder. The only explanation I can think of, and I'm not sure if this is right or wrong, and I'm not disagreeing with you, but batting average in this area, in the sabermetric era, has sort of lost a little luster with a lot of people. It's now more about on-base percentage, more about OPS, more about wins above replacement. Now, none of that addresses the question of why these people are striking out so much and why can't people fix it. But there is that tendency now to look more at power, to evaluate it in a different way than it was in the past. Personally, the bottom line is that when the ball is in play, the game is a much better game to watch. It gets a little dull watching a guy trudge back to the dugout after strike 3, or sit there and argue with an umpire for a minute and a half after he gets a called third strike. So, you know, whether it's batting average, whatever metric you want to use or don't use, the game is better when the ball's, you know, going somewhere, going to the outfield, going to the infield, trickling down the third baseline. All that's more fun to watch than the pitcher throwing it and the catcher throwing it back to him or throwing it around the horn.
I think another one of those big stats is BPEP or whatever, batting average with
Balls in play.
Yeah. And, you know, that sabermetrics, it's a lot of it goes beyond me, but there's some truth behind it, what is important now. You look at it, you know, people talk about 400 being the magic batting average. I think now anymore, when's the next guy going to hit 350 or better? Because 400 hasn't been close since, what, George Brett, 391 or not?
Tony Gwynn was
Tony Gwynn, yeah, Tony Gwynn a couple times flirted.
Yeah, you don't see many guys that have that approach anymore. And on-base percentage is good, but it's also relative to your batting average. And your batting average is more relative to driving in runs than your on-base percentage is. So you can juggle with the sabermetrics and the numbers and play with them any way you want, but I still think that, as Sully noted, the game is different now, and it's not as much fun to watch. And as Twins fans, I mean, it's got to drive you as crazy as it does me to have second and third and nobody out, and two guys strike out, and the next one pops up.
Yeah, well, it's terrible. It's terrible baseball. It just is. Nothing, and it's reflecting the fact they're 6-14 right now. That's part of it.
And the fact that I think they think their talent is a lot better than it is, and they don't apparently have very good coaching.
Well, next question, do the Cubs have any issues like this now? I mean, what we did,
They've been playing the Reds, they haven't had any of those issues.
What's Chris Bryant
throwing,
strikes out
they're
quite a
throwing
bit.
no hitters, Bryant's hitting the ball over the fence, Rizzo has 4 home runs a night, it must be pretty dull to watch all
Well,
that.
they're on the other end of the spectrum. I mean, Jake Arrieta, 2 no-hitters and 10 starts. He's in the zone right now as probably the dominant of the starting pitcher as there is in the game. It's crazy to watch. And the thing with the Cubs is after a loss, they've been killing teams in that next game too. I forget what the number is, but it's been pretty impressive the way they bounced back.
So they don't have many close games. It's 9-0, 8-1. So, yeah, they're really impressive. All right, let's talk a little Waterloo Blackhawks hockey. They got through their first round playoff series, beat Lincoln 3-1 in the best of 5, and that earned them the right to go to play Tri-City in the conference finals, I guess it would be.
Yeah,
First 2 games in Kearney, Nebraska, Friday and Saturday, is that right?
Friday and Saturday night.
And looking just a little bit this morning, the Blackhawks had a good regular season against Tri-City, won 3 out of 4, 2 of them at Kearney, so, and then 1 at home. 2 of the games were in overtime, so it's apparently a pretty good matchup. Fill us in, Nellie.
Well, it is going to be a good matchup, and the interesting thing is Kearney, Tri-City is the Western Division, Western Conference, however you look at it, champion, but had they lost 15 times in overtime or shootout. It was an incredible number, and that's how they done it. They did it before the year. The league looked into having a 3-point system and getting 3 points for winning in regulation, and had that happened, Tri-City would not have made the playoffs or something like that because they wouldn't have gotten all those points or whatever. It was really interesting note, but it's a good series. Like I said, 2 of those games went to overtime. Waterloo pairs up well with them. They're playing well. It just came off an incredible series, 4 great games against Lincoln. That was true playoff hockey, and the Sunday's game was amazing, and Saturday's was equally as amazing. 2 teams that left it all on the ice, and but going into this, the Blackhawks are playing confident. They're getting contributions depth-wise. At least the forward lines, the 3 forward lines really. In overtime, they didn't play their 4th line a lot. They kind of shortened up the bench a little bit, but they're getting depth across it, and their 2 youngest guys might have had the biggest impact on Sunday's game. Mikey Anderson, a 16-year-old defenseman. I think he's turned 17 since the league started, but he had a goal and an assist. And then Shane Bowers, kid from Canada. He didn't have any. You didn't see his name on the stat sheet, but boy, did he really play well, and he created opportunities for his teammates and was great on the forecheck and the back check, and when those 2 guys are playing as well as their best players and their older players, it's a team that's playing well, and they're getting good goaltending. So I like their chances of getting through here, against Tri-City and having a good start. Like I said, they did win a couple times in Kearney already, so they're feeling confident there, and it's going to be a good matchup.
Tri-City rolled through their first round series, right? Didn't they go 4-0 or 3-0?
3-0, yeah. They really took it to Sioux Falls. They won big. They won easily at home, and then went into Sioux Falls, and where Sioux Falls this year drew over 200,000 fans. I'm sure there was 8,000 or 9,000 people at that game, and won there. So they're playing confident, playing well right now. It's going to be They haven't played in the playoffs. Last time Waterloo played them in the playoffs was 2008, and it was a different playoff system. Waterloo beat them. It was a best of 3 then, and Waterloo swept them 2-0. And then the previous time they played Tri-City in the playoffs was the Clark Cup Finals back in 2003 and 2004, and Waterloo beat them in that series 3-1, and that was Joe Popolski and that gang, and the only Clark Cup title that Waterloo's ever won.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that, starting Friday night, 7:05 in Kearney, and then Saturday night, and then the following weekend, I think they're back here for Game 3 that's Friday night too, here at Young
Yeah.
Arena, so. Nick and Sully, you guys will, or can fill us in a little bit about the Drake relays, what should we be looking for there here this weekend? Panthers will be sending a large contingent, and we'll also have some of our top local high school kids down there too competing.
Yes, Sully can probably fill you in a little bit more on the college level. One of the interesting things will be with the high school races, Cedar Falls is primed to do well in a variety of events. I think that the distance events will be pretty interesting. You have Sam Schillinger, a junior, who's coming off a runner-up finish in state cross-country. Him and Isaac Smith, a senior, have both been really having impressive Aprils. They each broke a school record in the 1600 earlier this year that was set in 1976, and they broke it in the same race. And it's a deep field in some of those distance events. And then in the 800, there'll be a pretty good race with Hunter LaValle of Cedar Falls in the mix. And there's like, what, 12 guys that are...
There's 5 guys within 3/10 of a second of each other, top 5 guys, including the defending champion, record holder Ryan Schweitzer of West Des Moines Dollar.
Looks like Cedar Falls is determined to, the boys are determined to make a big splash in Des Moines too. They had a meet last night in Mason City and didn't run a lot of their main guys in some of those events, so.
No, they're pretty well prepared for this, and as we just suggested, the boys 800 meter could be a fantastic race to watch, as a bunch of talented athletes have gone after Ryan Schweitzer. The 16 and the 32 could be almost as good. Cedar Falls also has an excellent 4x4 relay team, as does Dike New Hartford, which is interesting because you rarely see a 1A, 2A school sneak in to a sprint relay and do well, but these guys sound like the real deal. And Waukee could also be in that field, and they had a great race with Cedar Falls at the end of the 2015 Drake relays. That Waukee came from behind, won, and then Cedar Falls avenged that defeat at the state track meet. As far as UNI goes, the Panthers have a couple of people who have done very, very well, both indoors and outdoors. Of course, Brandon Carnes, the sprinter who's basically undefeated indoors in the Missouri Valley Conference. He'll run the Open 1 down there and a couple of relays. He's placed before. He's been top 8 in the 100. Paige Knodel will be going in the multi-events. I think she's got a pretty good chance to do well, assuming that disaster doesn't strike her again. The poor woman has, I don't know what she's done to offend the track and field gods at Drake, but 2 years ago she got sick in the middle of it and had to pull out. Last year she was out for the season because of back surgery. And here she is this year. She's having a great season. She's been setting school records in the hurdles. She's going to qualify for the NCAA outdoor meet and the heptathlon. And like I said, she's performing well enough now that I think she has a real chance at finishing well at Drake. You also have Justin Baker in the throws for UNI, who's leading the Valley in the hammer. He'll be in that event, and he'll be in the shot put. So they have some areas where they could do very, very well individually. Relays, I'm not so sure. I'm not sure exactly how they'll line up, but there's a couple of events where they could do very, very well.
Yeah, they've got some marquee athletes out there.
Yeah.
And I should mention too, a couple kids here in Waterloo that'll be and fun to watch in the 100. Tayshawn Cooper, he qualified for the finals last year, finished 7th. He's back. He's been running stronger this season. He's looking to kind of maybe see if he can get into that top 3 range. And then there's a freshman from Waterloo East, Karis Roberts. She has the second best time in the state going in. Had a strong performance at the Dickinson relays against this tough field, and she'll be one that'll be pretty exciting, I think, to watch over the years. A lot of upside there, so it'll be interesting to see if she can maybe make the finals there in her first Drake relays as well.
What's the weather look like?
Terrible. No, it's not going to be good Wednesday. I think it improves by Friday and Saturday. I think there's maybe a high 50s, low 60s chance of showers. So it's pretty much an average weekend of the Drake relays.
Yeah.
No snow at least.
No snow. Another interesting event coming up Friday night. UNI will wrap up spring football drills with their spring game at 6 p.m. in the Unidome. Just talking a little bit with Coach Farley yesterday at the UNI Coaches Luncheon. He was pretty impressed with, I guess, the progress his offense has made with the transition to more of a drop-back passing game. And he's a little concerned at the same time about the numbers that he's going to have available, especially on the offensive line for Friday's game, but he said some kind of a game will go on, so if you have a chance to get out, go see what the Panthers have to offer. Aaron Bailey's a pretty special athlete, along with several other guys, and there's a 5 p.m. tailgate on the Eldon Miller Plaza with free food and refreshments. So there's a lot going on out there, and that'll be a fun event. Nellie, kind of bring us up to date, I guess, with what you think about that game and where Panther football is.
Well, it's really been hard to, I don't think they're gonna allow me to come to practice anymore, because 2 Saturdays ago, I went and Brandon Smith blew out his knee. And then last week, one of the offensive linemen, a healthy offensive lineman they had, and Jackson Scott Brown, or Brown Scott, I'm gonna mix up his last name there. He went down with a leg injury, so I don't know if they're gonna let me come back. It's been tough. They have a lot of guys that got injured, had surgery in the off-season, and those guys have been dressed, but they can't do any contact.
Right.
So that's limited the numbers they've had, especially on the offensive line. I think they have 4 guys that were already not going to participate. And so they're down to 5 or 6 offensive linemen. And so it's going to be hard to have a spring game when you only have 5 offensive linemen, if you only have 5 offensive linemen available. And this past Saturday, well, Dries Fountain was running track. They only had 3 available wide receivers to run, too, and those guys got tired in the 40 to 45 play scrimmage I watched. So it's going to be interesting to see that they haven't allowed Aaron Bailey to run, and that's, everybody who's seen you and I play last year knows that's a big part of his game. It's going to, but they've been trying to work on his passing game, and he's made strides there. He's making reads, he's progressing, he's throwing. They made it difficult for him, anytime he tried to move or correct this, move a little bit out of the pocket, they blew the whistle, and it was a sack. I'm sure it's been frustrating for him as well. On the defensive side, the secondary has been, they're working. A work in progress. They've gotten the defense definitely got feisty on Saturday. There was 2 or 3 skirmishes, and they drew the line in the sand and said, we're tired of getting pushed around this spring, and 2 weeks ago, Carter Schultz, they just kept him on the sidelines. They wanted to see some other defensive linemen, and then he got to go this week, and he was one of those guys that, there was a play, he ran over a defensive lineman, and next thing you know, there was 3 offensive linemen, shoving him around, and he was taking on the whole offensive lineman. He goes, it wasn't anything personal, it was just, showing the toughness that we needed to show. And then Jameson Whiting and Cody McCoy got after it. That was an extended one. They rolled around on the turf for quite a bit before they could pull them apart. So it's one of those things, they've got a lot of things to work on. 2 things I thought was interesting is they moved A.J. Allen and Deshaun Dexter back they played outside linebacker last year. They moved them back to safety, giving them some looks there to see if that's something that could work going forward through the summer and into 2-a-days next year. I mean, Deshaun Dexter played a lot of football for him last year. A.J. Allen, because of injuries, played a little bit towards the end of the season. And it was really at an outside linebacker type thing. And so it'll be interesting. They both are not big. They weren't big linebackers, so they could play safety. So it's going to be interesting if that moves forward.
Yeah, it'll be interesting if they're fast enough to play safety at that level on a regular basis. But the other thing that's interesting is, and Coach Farley pointed this out yesterday, they got about 60 guys in camp now. Well, they're going to add about 30 more in August. So a lot of the dynamics are going to change. They're going to find some players in that group that's coming in, and they're going to fit into the mix. And then they're going to get all these guys who are sidelined with injury now back into the fold. So I don't know how much we're going to be able to look at Friday's game and say, this is going to carry over to the fall, because there's still a lot of moving parts and things are going to change quite a bit yet.
Yeah, definitely that, and that's it. There's just so many unknowns, and they're getting their work in the best they can right now with the limited amount of resources they've got.
All right, we need to go. That's going to do it for today. If you can't get out and see your favorite teams in person, you can keep up with all the action in our print editions or at www.wcfcourier.com. We'll probably not be on a regular basis now for the rest of the summer. We'll get together and have this conversation when we're all available, but it's vacation season and not as much going on, so it'll be a little more sporadic. But we'll see you again when we see you again.